We don't need to rely on mythology to prove that India was great. The Golden Road talks about what we are actually reading through Dalrymple is history. History of India, history of our own past.
So, Vic, last time we met, I saw a lot of history non-fictions.
Yes.
And one thing is common, William Dalrymple.
Oh, yeah.
So, I see a lot of his collection here, a lot of his books. So, isn't it hard to choose favorites among favorites?
It's not really about favorites. I mean, as I told you probably last time also, when I get interested in an author, I tend to look at all his works. Same with Dalrymple. I think the principle is if you find an author who has ideas or way of narration which is not ordinary, which is sort of extraordinary, exemplar, you follow him. I think that's the case with Dalrymple also. Right. The most important thing that William Dalrymple talks about, and it's kind of a thing that has stuck me in the head, that we Indians don't need to talk about mythology and mythological past that we always rely on.
So, I think, Vivek, it will be a delight to decode Dalrymple, I guess. So, should we do it?
Sure, let's go.
Okay. So, Vivek, you mentioned that Dalrymple always says this, that India's past is so spectacular that doesn't mean myths. What do you think he meant?
You see from your own past, the stories that we've been raised up with, or the stories I have been raised up with, or the things that we hear really about our past are mostly in the sphere of mythology. We had nuclear weapons back in the days of Mahabharata, or we had cloning happening back then, or we had technology to have aircrafts or aeroplanes or teleportation back then, right? Or even plastic surgery. We don't need to rely on mythology to prove that India was great or India contributed in an immense way to the world civilization or to the development of human knowledge. You don't need to do that. You need to just look deeper and in a more profound way and in a more scientific way at our past rather than relying on mythologies. And if you do that, then you will see the influence India has had on the world. And it is quite profound. And that's what Dalrymple in his new book, The Golden Road, talks about.
True.
He talks about the Indian sphere of influence.
Right.
Indosphere, he calls it.
True, definitely. I mean, Dalrymple has his own knack of storytelling. It's very unique. Whether it's this book, Golden Road, or whether it's Anarchy, whether it's the white, Mughals. So, what is it about his storytelling that really impresses you?
Well, yeah, you said it right. What we are actually reading through Dalrymple is history. History of India, history of our own past. The Mughal age, the antique past, or the past which is much before the Mughals also. But that's all history. And history, by definition, if you say it and talk to anybody, boring. It's about hates and it's about events and which king killed who, which king, and so on and so forth. But that's not what Dalrymple does. Dalrymple gives it a twang in such a way that it becomes so interesting. It is what you call storytelling. It tells you a story, and these stories are so engaging and so enticing that you end up, reading them and remembering these stories. It's no longer about just the kings. It's about the common man. It's all about the common trader. So it's more about cohesive cultural impact that he talks about rather than just talking about the keys.
True, perfect. Which was your first book of Dalrymple? I mean, when did you first meet Dalrymple?
It was many years back. I don't even remember how many years back. I think probably I was in the college when I first read The White Mughals. Okay. And the Tachi itself is enticing. It is the first Englishman who arrived here, trading, obviously, through East Indian Company, and had Mughal wives.
Right.
And their offsprings were whites, obviously, and those were white Mughals, and those offsprings, the white Mughals, and then sort of they got thinking, here's a guy who's trying to, retell our own history to us in a way which we never thought about before. That's how I started liking Dalrymple. One of the most important books, I think, was The Last Mughal. Though we have all heard of Bahadur Shah Zafar, he being the last Mughal, and after that the Mughal empire coming. going down and so on and so forth, he being taken to Rangoon. We've all been brought up with the story. But it was much more complicated than that. When you read this book, you understand the Mughals had already, he was just a titular head. He had no power. And he was saying in Delhi that Sultanate Shah Alam, Delhi se leke Palam. So that was a sort of state of Mughals even before Bal's Zafar. Yeah. So these these details, you really don't know. And you tend to look at history in black and white and in a very flat way.
And I think these intricacies only Dalrymple can bring it out in a very spectacular way. I think you mentioned about college, like where you first read the White Mughals back there. So how did you get the information on Dalrymple? Was it a recommendation from a special one, or was it on your, radio?
So I think I read a book review in newspaper. I used to write Times of India those days. It was Sunday Times. Sunday Times had a section of book reviews, yeah. And then that's where I read about White Mughal, and it sort of enticed me. I couldn't get the book immediately because we talk about my college days when you had to go out and buy a book and go to a bookstore and so on and so forth.
So since White Mughals to the Golden Road, what do you think still, stands out about Dalrymple that pulls you back to him all the time?
I think his way of recreating those aspects of history, which which takes us by surprise. The fact is that from Mughals, okay, he wrote about White Mughals and the last Mughal and so on and so forth. Then I thought, okay, he's specializing in Mughal history and that's his forte. Then he goes to the Last King, which is again Indians fighting in Afghanistan, which is completely different than reprising about Mughals. And then finally, what was most fascinating is when we wrote the Golden Road.
Yes.
And we didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. And this book took me by surprise. You never knew, or rather I never knew, that important trading relations, much more than the Chinese had, that ancient Indians had with the Romans. There is this map of Roman coin pH, Roman coins found in digging. And then he draws out a map and sees where you found those coins. Okay, it is actually in, obviously, Europe, the Roman Empire, the old Roman Empire. And then some parts of North Africa, like Egypt, you find a lot of coins there because that was part of Roman Empire. Antony and Cleopatra, they were there. And then some parts of West Asia, like Gaza was a main port at the time. And then you find them in India, southern India specifically, near the ports of Muziris in Kerala or even Gujarat and some parts of eastern ports also. It proves that there was huge amount of trade happening before Christ, we're talking about, it BC era, between Romans and South Indians. This was elite kind of trade happening. It was not trade in which a common Roman would use stuff. It was high-end stuff being sent from India. It's like iPhones going to India to US. So it was that kind of trade happening. I think around that time, the Roman Empire started to sort of disintegrate. So, there was this Iranian Kharajivis that fought with them, and ultimately, there were many wars, and ultimately the Roman Empire started to disintegrate. And when this empire started to disintegrate, obviously the trade stopped. You couldn't trade with them because it's no longer the great Roman Empire, which had a lot of gold and which had a lot of wealth. Suddenly they disintegrated. And then the Indians are left with no trade with it. And then they say, what to do now? We have a lot of gold. Where do we get gold from? We are very used to getting gold. So for their wares. And then the South Indian, the Tamil traders, they found groups and started going towards east.
Okay.
Now east is when I go east, about Laos, Cambodia, Highlands, Vietnam, up the Malacca Strait, Malaysia, Indonesia, all that places. And then they think, wow, this place is more gold than Rome. We heard of Romans. So much so that this place was called Swarnabhumi. Yes, Indians called this part of the world Swarnabhumi. There was the gold there. You have Buddha, but now wearing a Khmer dress. Okay. So when you trade, you also trade your culture. You also take your culture with you, and that was the most accenting part of this Indosphere. That we just didn't trade. We also took bits of our culture from here to there, and from there to here also. There. So just to put the point that it was a huge cultural shift, cultural influence that India took to Southeast Asia. Also, besides trade and cultural influences, it had to the best.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, Abhishek. You see, so we again, at least I thought, world was insular in the past, and now we are interacting a lot with each other and giving us each other ideas and thoughts. But it's not like that.
I mean, that's the reason it's called the Golden Road. I mean, what you just quoted is so fascinating, and
it's basically because it corresponds to Silk Road. He says because of the Silk Road, right from China, where the Silk trade used to happen.
How fascinating is that? I mean, getting back then on Dalrymple, after reading this book, or maybe Anarchy or something like that, he has transitioned over period. So why do you think Dalrymple is still relevant in today's time?
See, you have to understand that what we are today is amalgamation of lots of paths and lots of influences and lots of cultures that we are sort of carrying with us. So I think that is what the developer helps us to unravel and helps us to understand. And yeah, that's great.
I mean, being a history enthusiast, we both eagerly wait for Dalrymple books. I think in the next episode, we'll be debating something much more interesting.
Probably then. Thanks, Abhishek.